Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Fed Up, your no BS nutrition podcast. I'm your host, Kayla Marie, certified personal trainer and nutrition specialist, working with clients since 2014. After swimming up diet culture's bullshit stream for so many years, I am fed the absolute up with how miserable it's making people feel when we are supposed to be getting healthier. This podcast is here to help you gain your sanity back so you can stop yo-yoing once and for all and finally learn how to trust yourself so you can enjoy food again without fear or shame, while still getting to your health goals. My aim is to teach you how to detect the BS in not just the food and diet industries, but in all realms of life, because I know that, like me, we are all just a little fed up. So without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of Fed Up. Thank you so much for being here. Today, we are talking about something very controversial, and I don't care. We're going to talk about it anyway. And I really wanted to name this episode, Keep Your Anti-Humanism Out of My Breakfast Cereal. I still might do that, but I'm really afraid it's going to go over everyone's heads, which we'll get to in a moment. Today's episode is going to be pretty... Let's see. We're going to talk about more the history and the GMO project, particularly today, a little bit about the history of GMOs in general and how we got to where we are now. And then there's probably going to be a part 2 about actual foods and the health and a little bit more of applicable information for you. Today's episode's going to be for your information because I find it fascinating and it might save you a couple of bucks or at least just, be interesting to some people. So, in general, I think one of the hardest parts of being a nutrition specialist, an educator, en route to be a registered dietitian or an RT2B, as they call us, a registered dietitian to be, is the amount of undoing we have to do. We have to really try hard not to just tell people they're wrong, or at least I have to try really hard not to tell people they're wrong, which is why I created this podcast so I can just tell people they're wrong without, actually being in a consultation with them. Because I've learned something over the past 10 years. People hold on to their nutrition beliefs and their health beliefs like they do religion. It is going to take a life-altering moment to change this person's beliefs, not just somebody spewing at them a different religious text, right? So I have to understand, and that's not to judge anybody, it's just people believe what they want to believe, and it is very, very challenging to convince anybody otherwise, whether it's politics, religion, or it's health and nutrition and exercise. And I laugh because it has been my entire life, okay? I'm an argumentative type of gal. If you met any of my family, we are all like this. And it has taken a lot of learning to be able to step back and be like, okay, do not tell this person they are wrong. Do not tell them their God is dead, all right? And it feels like we are constantly swimming upstream because the fear-mongering around certain foods is like fear-mongering someone from the pits of hell, okay? So I digress. I know that this episode, as many other episodes, are probably going to want to cause people to riot. I know that it's challenging a lot of the information that you hear, and maybe you decide to trust me, maybe you don't. I'm not here to change your mind, okay? If you want to argue with me, all good. I'm wrong in a lot of things, by the way. If you do bring up some good points, bring some evidence, bring some backup, let's have a discussion. Let's have some discourse around this because it should not just be Maha versus everything else. It should not just be, yes, this is good. No, this is bad. It should not just be, this is healthy. This is not healthy. It should not be like that because that dichotomous way of thinking, as we know, we are over 10 episodes in now. It just creates ruin. It's not making people healthier. It's harming people in the short and the long term. So my pride and passion in life's calling is to dispel the bullshit. And telling people things are poisoning them when they are not, it doesn't help them consume any less of it. And even if they did it's still just, it's not a viable option here. So people are eating less fruits and vegetables overall because they think things like non-organic produce is bad for them, which is based on a lie. So we're going to get into that today. We're starting with the organic lie part 1, GMOs, genetically modified organisms. And there might be friggin' 5 or 10 parts to this series. I don't know, because I can talk about it forever. This is the biggest fucking lie out on the market right now. Not just that GMOs are bad for you, but that organic is any better for you, which we're going to get into all the reasons. It's a lie, and you've been bamboozled. Okay, so anyway, let's talk first and foremost about logical fallacies. Logical fallacies are when you try to make an argument connecting A to B, and you use something like a red herring, a straw man. You've heard those terms before. You insult somebody, an ad hominem, I think that's what that's called. You make a personal attack. You bring up a different, well, because of this over here issue, we're going to apply that to the current issue, A equals C when you're ignoring B, something like that, right? So there's all these loopholes in your argument. One of those loopholes is called the appeal to nature fallacy. And you will hear Aunt Karen next week come over and bring her little banana chocolate chip muffins and say, it's all natural. Natural doesn't mean shit, okay? Number 1 bullshit myth of the day. Natural doesn't mean shit. Things that are natural try to kill you all the time. I wrote an essay in school entitled that. Maybe I'll post it now that I've been, out of that class now for a while. If you are using the term natural to mean better, healthier, whatever it may be, I'm even tempted to say this sometimes, but it literally doesn't mean anything. Hurricanes are natural. Snake venom is natural. A bee sting is natural. And if you're allergic to bee stings, they suck a lot and they'll kill people. Just because it's natural does not mean it is healthier, it is better, etc., which is the root cause or the root issue of when people think genetically modified organisms are bad for them. They're thinking it's man-made, it's synthetic, it's made in a lab. Ew. Okay, this romanticism of the natural world is problematic in so many ways. It's problematic in the history of evolution. Okay, you live in an urban community. I'm sorry. If you really hated things that are unnatural, you would not live in a house. But houses are also the most natural thing that mammals, especially humans, have made over time, right? Whether they're made from mud huts and straw or concrete and brick or wood or whatever it may be. Or I live in a literal log cabin built in the 1860s when people were traversing through Montana and were like, this is where I claim land. I will build a cabin here. I live in one of those cabins. It's pretty cool, but also, as my boyfriend calls it, it's a tinderbox, and it makes me nervous because I have open flames and propane in my house. Anyway, I digress. When we talk about things that are man-made, that also means that they are tested and they're regulated and they're done in a very controlled environment. Let's just leave that there. A lot of times things that are man-made in a lab, much healthier than the things that we're just picking out of the ground that could be contaminated, and they have other compounds in them. This is why, yes, herbs can help to a certain degree, okay? You drink some mint tea, you have a little tummy ache. But if you have like dysentery, it's not going to help get rid of the parasite or the bacteria that's fucking up your gut. All right, so I digress. GMOs, genetically modified organisms, technically speaking, started when humans began selectively breeding their crops and their animals. This is why we probably have domesticated animals. Cats are not this friendly unless you have, over time, made them adaptable to humans. And whether this happened because humans were like, come here, kitty, or cats were like, you give me food. I want to domesticate you because you give me someplace warm and a place to eat. I don't have to hunt anymore. Cool. That's probably what happened with dogs, right? It's like, the friendliest wolves are hanging out, so much so that they become friends with the humans. Or whatever animal you want to talk about. You can look up the agricultural domestication of cows and goats and all that fun stuff. But technically, even some vaccines that we have are considered GMO. Insulin is a considered GMO now. So things that you may not actually consider a GMO because you're mainly talking about food. We have a lot of GMOs that are all over the place, whether they're done selectively, naturally, choosing which ones we're going to breed, or we're in a lab, transcribing one gene to another. Anyway, when we're looking at GMOs, let's talk about the history. Besides the selective breeding, when we talk about crops and how corn used to be very, very tiny and now it is large and juicy and delicious, we'll talk about that. Let's start first things first. In 1973, when we were first able to take one bacterium and transfer the gene from that bacterium to another bacterium, because bacteria is really easy for us to manipulate their genome. And we didn't think that this was possible. So they did it because they were like, let's study these bacteria and rip them apart and find things to do with them, because they're not human, right? They're not even animals. They are little cells. So we can fuck with them. So we created antibiotic-resistant E. coli. Why? Because it's easiest to do it with bacteria, and we didn't think we could do it before. So humans like to discover things. We like to invent things. We like to fuck shit up so we see what happens, right? So viruses, fungi, bacteria, these were the first things that we were fucking up in a lab. And now we're able to use them in agriculture, medicines, pharmaceuticals, food. We actually use a GMO to control mosquitoes in certain areas. You're welcome, the South, for not nearly having as much malaria as they could be having. This over time has created healthier and more sustainable food systems, which we'll talk about why that can create other issues, of course, but let's again stick to the history here. What was the first plant to be genetically modified? We're talking 1982, tobacco. Why did we do this? Because tobacco is not just for smoking, mind you, and also it's one of the oldest, plants and crops that we've been fucking with, for lack of a better word. So you can tell that I'm not an agricultural major. So we made tobacco resistant to antibiotics. We are able to grow them 40% larger, and we were able to reduce the nicotine production. Yay! Also, modified tobacco, we can produce proteins, other compounds that we use in pharmaceuticals. What? Yeah, a tobacco strain was able to create this treatment for malaria because it was able to synthesize, whatever compound it is that we use as one of the most effective malaria drugs. Yeah, we were able to just have a plant produce it for us. That's freaking cool. And if you're thinking well, this is weird, we shouldn't play God. Okay, fine. But that means do not accept another Tylenol in your life, all right? Do not look at your phone today, because guess what? We make things, we invent things, and as my father always liked to say, God knew humans were very curious, so he gave us a giant sandbox to play in. You can disagree with that all you want, which again, we will get to in a moment. Let's talk about the first GMO crop, 1992. A tomato. Yes, we were able to alter a rotting gene to make tomatoes last longer. Yay. Again, you can argue that's a bad thing somehow, but anyway, they have increased fungal resistance, increased viscosity. They're juicier, they're delicious, they're a little bit sweeter. Salmon, we farm genetically modified salmon, and that can weird you out all you want. But this allows us to farm all summer long. They grow to adulthood faster, so we're able to, buy salmon in the grocery store all the time. And again, you can say this is all bad, but when you want wild-caught salmon, you are also willing to wipe out the natural salmon population, which, if that's your forte, fine, but it's not mine. This gene that we're able to affect in the fish affects their growth hormone, but this, again, if you're just oh my God, that's so gross, that's so weird, this appeal to nature fallacy, that's not natural. Okay, fuck off. It doesn't mean that we should just wipe out the entire salmon population because you want salmon on your frickin' salad, because what like organic health guru is not buying like store-bought salmon, okay? You are not in the river fishing out the salmon. And if you were, guess what? We're going to wipe out the salmon that way. So you can argue that's a bad thing, but you get your salmon this way. And in reality, it's probably better for the fish. All right. So in 1980s, there was this growing talk about the population of Africa, Afghanistan, India, that whole region, Egypt. They are struggling. Okay, the population's growing, but the food supply, there are some concerns. And there was this guy, gosh, what was his name? I don't remember his name. I did a whole PowerPoint on him a couple semesters ago. But anyway, he was like, oh no, there's millions going to die from starvation by the year 2000 if we don't figure something out. And what they were able to figure out was they modified rice and wheat to have a drastically increased yields, and it saved the entire like continent and area, region, so to speak, of India, certain parts of Northern Africa, Afghanistan, because they were able to farm and cultivate this wheat that fed millions of people. And now let's talk about the anti-humanism that you've put in my breakfast cereal. So when food can't keep up with the population, this has been a discourse in the philosophical Enlightenment period, industrialization, and now. It has been something that you will see in a Reddit feed that we have too many people anyway, there's too many children, blah, blah, blah. This argument of overpopulation is a moral dilemma. How do we save and make sure everybody lives, is well fed, has the medical access they need, but also we continue keeping the resources for a growing population that ends up surviving longer and growing because we have those medical and food interventions? So in those hunter-gatherer societies where everything is shared and everyone farms for their own family eventually, and then we see that, sorry, there's a truck going by. Hope you guys can't hear that. Also, if you hear random cows mooing, so sorry. My studio is my log cabin on a cattle farm. We're going with it. So when you look at this evolution of people were in small tribes before, and now they're on maybe, rural farms. They're farming for their own families. You have the serfs and the landowners and all that stuff. And then you have the industrialized revolution where people are now moving to cities and we have factories and we're producing things, and the population is growing and growing and growing and growing. This is why we're at, I don't even know what we're at, 6 billion when I was a child, and I think we're at 8 billion now. That's insane. So people knew, okay, we're growing in population because we have these interventions, but also if the population starts to outgrow our resources, it's a problem. Now, you can agree or disagree in China's one-child rule. You can say, well, that's how it should be. You can wish for a giver's world, if you ever read that book. We can argue this all you want, but that is a different conversation that is kind of underlying a lot of these current modern-day conversations about organic produce, about sustainable farming systems, and all of these things. In one hand, fast food has allowed people lots of access to food. On the other hand, is that access to food healthy, good for us, blah, blah, blah? You can have those arguments, right? When you talk about population growth and food production, we are actually looking at somebody called Malthus. They call it Malthusianism. That's a hard word to say. Anyway, it's his last name added anism. Again, he looked at population growth as exponential. Food production is linear. When we have overpopulation, then it causes depopulation, decreasing birth rates because we are outgrowing our production of food. So these were advocates of population control. It does create this moral dilemma in these late 1700s, early 1800s, where Thomas Malthus was like, this is a problem. What should we do? Right? Then you have this paradox that you also had other philosophers like Marx, who was arguing, no, it's capitalism. And it's the fact that we have this increasing rich versus poor gap that is starving people. Whereas Malthus was taking the stance that, no, it's because there's too many people. So there's kind of this back and forth. Either way, they're arguing this paradox of population growth is an issue, which it can be. So when we're talking about GMOs, if you're like, GMOs are unnatural, they're bad, everything should be organic and natural, and we should farm for our own food again, just know that more than half of our population would die if that was a reality, right? So when you look at also what these people were talking about, they were worried that contraceptives would be, used in certain ways. Like, these people were arguing about like human worth, not just like whether or not you should buy the carrot. Okay? They were arguing about, okay, we know that the progress of society depends on population growth, but we also know that population growth is going to kill us. What should we do here? Free food, welfare, giving people access, the lower class, is going to prevent them from dying, which is going to make the population grow even more. That's an issue. So the lower class, the reason they exist is to keep the population in check. That's what Malthus was arguing. And then when you look at Marx, he's talking about how capitalism grows away from feudalism, which is like farming for your own family, and the progressing, inventing, the obsession with more and more and more is at the expense of lower class and labor workers. So when we look at the analysis that we're even talking about modern day, we're looking at this discourse of man-made versus natural, and we're looking at overpopulation. And you might not even realize that. Like, we're not sitting in our happy little homes in the US, typically, and wondering whether or not to buy organic fruits and vegetables. We're not debating on like, should I have one more child or not? That's not necessarily the same conversation you're having at the grocery store, right? However, when you hear a lot of this mainstream push of GMOs are bad, I want you to ask yourself, what is the motivation? Why are GMOs considered bad? Who's saying that, where we do have this other group of people, the inventors, the scientists, the health, whatever they are, who are working in the lab, inventing these GMOs, saving the entire country of Africa, entire country of India, and the entire continent of Africa. I know the difference, trust me. When you're looking at that guy, what was he doing? Okay, he's trying to save millions of people from death, from starvation in the streets. That's a good sign. And then you look at the Non-GMO project. Who is this nonprofit organization? Let's talk about their $40 billion in annual sales. Not of GMO products necessarily, of their label. Let's make that clear. Anyway, when you go to their website, and this is where most, if not all, of my information today is from. It is from their own website, and then me either clicking or researching further on people or ideas from their website. That was my main source. So first things first, when you look at their website, if you're like, apply to be, say I have a product and I'm like, I want the non-GMO project label on my product. What are they marketing to the business owner, to the manufacturer, to put this label on their product? Is it the health of their customers? No. By the way, on their entire website, as they are trying to get people to apply for the non-GMO project stamp of approval, they market it as, you'll see a 20% increase in product sales by having the label. So I want to remind you something that my very smart and handsome boyfriend has taught me recently, because I'm from a Paul family. I do not know how stocks work. That weirds me out. And when Jay is explaining to me the stock market, essentially, I never realized it's like people-based, like it's us. It is market. It is our behavior, our spending, trust, all of that stuff. It's the psychology and the behavior of the people. So when you look at what this label is doing, Is it because they care about your health? Oh, there's more organic products on the market because y'all are willing to pay for it. Why? Because they've bamboozled you to thinking that they're better and healthier when they are not. So let's look at the CEO, Megan Westgate, who makes multiple six figures per year, by the way. The CEO, where she started, I'm so sorry, but I think it's the board of directors that I was looking at. Nepotism all the way through and through. They are the founders of the head of the board of the directors, the first one listed, of a plant-based food company, mind you, by the way, capitalist. And they have because this is a nonprofit organization, all of them have their own ventures, their own businesses, their own agenda. Keep that in mind. So when I was looking through these, I'm like, okay, so who else do you work for? What else do you own? Well, Alan Lewis is the head of a Colorado healthy food chain store. He is a political trade advocate person. He's like a lobbyist, basically. Tina Owens used to work for big food such as Kellogg. She's like the marketing person, I'm pretty sure. She also owns a family farm that is all about, again, Nutrient Density Alliance, I think is one of her companies. She owns multiple stakes in these other industries. You have Dr. Vimal Ramji, who's a cardiologist. What the fuck does he have to do with There's an environmentalist who is fresh out of college, and most of her biography is about where Mrs. Ruiz is from, by the way, and her diversity. You have another industry leader. That's her credential, by the way, quote, industry leader. What the fuck is that? You have people that are involved in CSAs and farmers markets and grocery program. They ran the entire grocery program at Whole Foods. There's this one guy, his name is Errol Schweitzer. He is credited with popularizing the trends such as grass-fed, fair trade, biodynamic. He's credited with shepherding 10,000 products with the label. He's on numerous boards. He has an LLC by his own name because he's a, consultant type of guy for multiple retail supply chains. He's the guy that tells you how to sell shit. He's the guy that tells you how to lay out Whole Foods and what to write on the walls so that people are attracted to your store. He's a marketeer, okay? He is an industry leader, whatever the fuck that means. These are people that have zero credentials in nutrition, zero credentials in farming a lot of the time, except for being the daughter of some big farming, in Wyoming or some shit. These are people that have personal stakes in their own agenda for getting this label on more of their own products that they're sponsoring. Bet you didn't know that. And you can go to their website and look at who is involved and click on their names and look up their companies and be like, wait a second, this is your board of directors is all people that own plant-based natural farms and food sources. Y'all think that it's the big food and the pharmaceutical companies that are coming after you, and y'all forget about big organic and big wellness. They are a billion-dollar industry when y'all are complaining about big food being only $1 million industry. Do you know how much more a billion is than a million? Think about that, okay? Anyway. Moving on, if you want to look at that Instagram guy, by the way, his name is @grocery.nerd. I'm going to give it to you because I want you to look at the entire vibe of this guy is just fear-mongering in order to put more money in his own goddamn pocket. And I hope you know that. So most of this GMO shit is based on it's unnatural, and put your Non-GMO project sticker on your product so that you can sell more to the bamboozled audience that we've told organic food doesn't use pesticides, which it does, by the way, and organic food is natural, which means nothing, by the way. And all of this argument about humans messing with nature or overpopulation, again, we can talk about that moral dilemma throughout this discourse, but I just want to bring that into context of they don't care about your health, okay? That has nothing to do with this. All right, so let's talk about genetically modified organisms to begin with, what the hell they are. That's what I'm so sorry, there's a dog. Farm life. Okay, so part 2, we're going to talk about what the hell genetically modified organisms are, some examples like insulin and potatoes and corn and all of that stuff, and exactly what they do and why the hell we have them, because it's not just to make E. coli resistant to antibiotics. So anyway, farm sounds. Let's go on to part 2. Thanks for listening. Hope this was somewhat interesting. And if you want to check my sources, I will link them down at the bottom. Thanks. See you next time. Thanks so much for being here, friends. If you enjoyed this episode, please screenshot and tag me over on Instagram or leave a 5-star review wherever you are listening from. Your support means the world to me and only helps me get the no BS news out to more people. If you're interested in working with me in nutrition or personal training, check out my programs and courses on my website at kaylamariefitness.com and on Instagram at kaylamarie_fit. See you next week.